What if the biggest mistake in retirement isn't running out of money, but holding on to the wrong things? Stick with me for the next 12 minutes because I'm revealing the 5 things 95% of retirees refuse to sell. And the second you let them go, your stress vanishes, your bank account grows, and retirement finally feels like freedom. Miss even one of these and you'll stay trapped forever. Let's dive in. When most people start thinking about retirement, their minds immediately jump to things like how much they've saved, what investments they should buy, or whether they've got enough to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But after working with so many retirees over the years, I've learned something different. Retirement isn't just about what you have. It's about what you're willing to let go of, and that shift in mindset can make all the difference between feeling financially free and feeling trapped by the very things you once thought defined your success. So if you're getting close to retirement, or maybe you're already there and still trying to figure out how to make it all feel right, I want to share something that could make this new chapter lighter, freer, and more intentional. Today, we're not talking about what to buy. We're talking about what to sell. There are 5 things, 5 specific things that many people hold on to far longer than they should. And when they finally decide to let them go, something amazing happens. Their confidence goes up, their stress goes down, and suddenly retirement feels less like an endless list of worries and more like an open road waiting to be explored. Let's start with the first one, because it's the one that has the biggest financial impact for most people: the oversized house. For decades, your home was the center of your family story. It's where you raised the kids, hosted birthdays, maybe even watched your grandkids take their first steps. But when the children grow up and move out, what once felt perfectly sized can start to feel like too much. Too much space to clean, too much yard to maintain, too many repairs and bills that don't bring joy anymore. I've seen it countless times. There's one couple I remember clearly. They raised 5 kids in a beautiful 2-story home in Illinois. It was close to their favorite park within walking distance to the downtown shops. They loved that part of their life. But when the winters started feeling colder and the house started feeling emptier, they began wondering if maybe it was time to make a change. They didn't want to leave their community, but they also didn't want to keep pouring money and energy into a house that no longer matched the way they lived. So they made a smart move. They sold the big family home, took the equity, about $200,000, and bought a smaller condo in the same town to use during the summer months. The rest of the year, they spent in a warmer place down south. That decision completely changed how they experienced retirement. Not only did they free up a huge amount of equity, they also cut about $15,000 a year in property taxes, maintenance, utilities, and repairs. But the financial part wasn't even the best part. What they gained was freedom. They no longer felt tied down by the never-ending list of house projects. Instead of being full-time home managers, they became full-time life managers. They had the flexibility to travel, spend more time outside, and do things that actually brought them happiness. That's the thing about downsizing. It's not really about moving into a smaller space. It's about expanding your life in other ways. Sometimes we hold on to a big house because it represents stability or memories. But those memories aren't stored in the walls. They live in us, and they go wherever we go. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is a little more emotional, and honestly, it's the hardest one for most people to face. It's not something you can sell on Facebook Marketplace or put a price tag on. It's the habit of financially supporting your adult children at the expense of your own security. I know that's a tough one. As parents, we never stop caring. We want to help our kids succeed. We want to see them happy, and we'll do almost anything to ease their struggles. But here's the truth that many people overlook. If you're 60 or older, your runway is short compared to theirs. You might have 1,000 weeks, give or take, of healthy, active life left. Your children have decades to earn, build, and bounce back from mistakes. I worked with a couple who pushed back their retirement by 3 whole years to help their daughter buy a house. Their intentions were pure. They wanted to give her a head start, but those were 3 years they could never get back. 3 years of energy, travel, and time that could have been theirs. And here's what most people don't realize. There are loans for houses, loans for cars, even loans for education. But there are no loans for retirement. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever help your kids. If you are in a good financial place and it doesn't jeopardize your own peace of mind, of course, help when you can. But make sure you're not sacrificing the only time in life when you finally get to live on your own terms. Because one day those same children will want you to be secure and independent too. They don't want to see you stressed out or struggling because you gave too much. And sometimes letting them face their own challenges is actually a gift. It teaches them how to build resilience, make smarter decisions, and create their own version of success. You've spent your life being their safety net. Maybe retirement is the time to gently step back and trust that they can stand on their own. All right, let's move to the third thing you should think about selling before you retire. This one might surprise you because it's something people hold on to for sentimental reasons. The expensive toys that have quietly turned into burdens. I'm talking about the boat that hasn't touched the water in 2 years, the RV that sits in storage most of the year, or the classic car collection that used to bring joy but now only collects dust and bills. These things often represent passion, freedom, or even identity. But over time, they can turn into quiet money leaks that weigh you down more than they lift you up. I once worked with a client named Tom who had a deep love for restoring old cars. Over 20 years, he rebuilt 5 beautiful classic vehicles, each one a labor of love. They weren't just machines to him, they were proof of his craftsmanship and persistence. But when Tom started preparing for retirement, those cars started costing him more than he ever expected. Storage, insurance, registration, maintenance, it all added up to around $12,000 a year. Now when his wife pointed that out gently, of course, he resisted. He said those cars were part of who he was, and I completely understood. But over time, he started noticing that he was spending less and less time visiting them. The cars sat in storage shining but unused, while the costs kept eating into their retirement budget. About a year later, he had a realization. He was holding on to the cars for who he used to be, not for who he was becoming. That's when he made the decision to keep his favorite car, the first one he ever restored, and sell the other four to collectors who would actually enjoy them. That single decision changed everything. He cut his yearly expenses by about $9,000, freed up $180,000 in capital, and lifted a huge mental weight. But here's the beautiful part. He didn't lose his identity, he rediscovered it. By keeping the one car he truly loved, he became a car enthusiast again, not a car manager. His weekends went back to what they were supposed to be: driving for fun, attending car shows, meeting friends, not worrying about storage payments or maintenance schedules. He found joy again, not in owning everything, but in keeping only what truly mattered. That's such an important lesson for retirement. Sometimes we think more is better. More hobbies, more toys, more memories packed into the garage. But in reality, keeping everything often prevents us from really enjoying anything. Letting go doesn't mean losing who you are. It means creating space to rediscover who you can become. When you start to see it that way, selling those unused or burdensome items doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like taking back control. You're not getting rid of joy, you're removing the clutter that's blocking it. So as you think about stepping into this next chapter of life, ask yourself what things you're still holding on to simply because they represent an old version of yourself. Maybe they made perfect sense when you were working, when your schedule was packed, when you needed that outlet or symbol of success. But now your time is different, your goals are different, and your peace of mind should come first. The beauty of retirement is that it's a chance to rewrite the rules, to focus less on possessions and more on experiences, less on status and more on simplicity. The first three things we've talked about, the big house, the financial support for adult children, and the expensive toys, have one theme in common. They all take from your future while pretending to add to your comfort. But once you let them go, you gain something far more valuable than what they were ever worth on paper. Freedom. Freedom from bills, from pressure, from unnecessary stress. Freedom to wake up each morning and actually enjoy the life you've worked so hard to create. And that's exactly what retirement should be about. If these first three lessons already hit you hard, smash that like button and type in the comments which one you're letting go of first. And if you want more retirement truths that actually change lives, hit subscribe and turn on the bell right now, because number 4 and number 5 will blow your mind. Now let's move on to the fourth thing that's worth reconsidering before or shortly after you retire. It might seem small compared to the house or the big ticket toys, but it's one of those quiet expenses that slowly chips away at your savings over time. The extra car. For decades, it probably made perfect sense for you and your spouse to each have your own vehicle. You both had work schedules, errands, maybe kids to drive around or appointments to rush to. 2 cars felt like a necessity, but once you stop commuting and your daily routine slow down, it's worth asking yourself, do we really need both? I know a couple who decided to test this idea. They were both retired, and while they liked the convenience of having two cars, they also noticed that one of them was barely being driven anymore. Insurance, maintenance, registration fees, all of it added up to around $3,000 a year. And that's not even counting depreciation. So instead of rushing into a sale, they decided to run a little experiment. For 2 months, they pretended they only had one car. They coordinated trips, planned errands together, and adjusted their schedules just a bit to see how it felt. You know what happened? It was much easier than they expected. They realized they actually enjoyed going out together more. It simplified their routine, and they didn't miss the second car at all. Once the test was over, they sold the extra vehicle and used the extra money to fund a few dream trips they'd been putting off for years. Instead of paying for something that sat in the driveway most days, they spent that money creating memories. This story always sticks with me because it's a perfect reminder that simplification doesn't have to mean sacrifice. Sometimes we think getting rid of something will make life harder when in reality it makes life lighter. And that's really what this stage of life should be about. Making space for ease, not obligation. Now, the fifth thing might be the hardest of all. It's something you can't sell on Craigslist or list on Zillow. But if you don't learn to let it go, it can quietly weigh you down more than any car or house ever could. I'm talking about your old work identity, that deep connection to your career, your title, and the validation that came with it. For so many years, your job might have been the backbone of your identity. It gave structure to your days, a sense of purpose, and maybe even pride in how people saw you. But once you retire, all that external validation, the deadlines, the meetings, the introductions that start with what you do, it disappears, and that can feel unsettling. I once had a client, a surgeon who retired after 30 years in medicine. Financially, he was in great shape. He had done everything right: investments, savings, the works. But 6 months into retirement, he sat across from me and said something that really hit me. "I used to be Dr. Miller. Now I'm just Michael." You could feel the sadness in that sentence. It wasn't about ego, it was about identity. For so long, being a surgeon wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. At first, he tried to fill that gap by volunteering at a free clinic. It gave him a bit of the old rhythm back, the sense of being needed. But after a while, he realized he was chasing something that no longer fit. He wasn't meant to be Dr. Miller anymore. He was meant to discover who Michael could be in this next chapter. When he shifted his focus, everything changed. He started mentoring young doctors instead of treating patients, picked up woodworking, spent more time with his grandkids, and slowly found a new kind of fulfillment that didn't depend on a job title. That's the truth about identity. You can't step into the next version of yourself if you're still clinging to the old one. Your job was what you did, not who you were. Retirement gives you the rare chance to explore the parts of yourself that had to sit quietly while you were building a career. The happiest retirees I've met are the ones who stop trying to recreate their work life and start building a brand new one around their passions, relationships, and purpose. Now that we've talked about the 5 things to let go of, I want to give you something practical to help you figure out whether it's truly time to sell or simplify something in your own life. It's a simple 3-step framework I use with my clients, and it can make these decisions much clearer. The first question to ask yourself is, does this still serve my new life, or does it serve my old one? This question cuts straight to the core of what retirement is about. Think about it. So many things we keep are tied to a version of ourselves that doesn't exist anymore. The house that made sense when the kids were young, the car that got you to work every day, even the collections or hobbies that used to define your weekends. Ask yourself honestly, was this thing important because of who I was back then, or because of who I want to become now? If it belongs to your old life, it might be time to let it go. The second question is, what's this really costing me? Not just in dollars, though, that's a big one, but in time, space, and energy. There's the obvious cost: insurance, maintenance, utilities, storage, taxes. But then there's the opportunity cost. What could that money do for you instead? Maybe it could fund travel, give you a bigger safety net, or allow you to spend more freely on experiences that bring you joy. There's also the energy cost, the mental clutter that comes with owning and maintaining things you no longer love. Every item takes a little bit of your attention, and attention is one of the most valuable currencies you have in retirement. And finally, the third question, if I let this go, what becomes possible? This one shifts you from scarcity to abundance thinking. Instead of focusing on what you're losing, it invites you to imagine what you might gain. What new experiences, opportunities, or sense of peace could open up if you simplified this part of your life? What could you do with that extra money that freed up time, that cleared out space? Sometimes just asking this question is enough to realize how much weight you've been carrying without noticing. Now, I know that making changes like these isn't always easy. That's why I recommend a simple, no-pressure way to test things out. Something I call the 90-day experiment. It's exactly what it sounds like. Before you make any permanent decision, live as if you've already done it for 60 to 90 days. Thinking about selling the RV? Try living without it for a few months. Maybe rent one for a weekend trip if you get the itch to travel and see how it feels. Wondering whether to sell that second car? Park it and go about your routine using just one vehicle. Curious what life would be like if you sold your second home? Spend a few months in one place and track how much easier things feel. The key is to pay attention not to what you miss, but to what you don't. Do you feel deprived or do you feel lighter, freer, less stressed? I've seen so many people shocked by how freeing it feels to let go of things they thought they couldn't live without. And remember, this whole process isn't about deprivation, it's about optimization. Retirement should never feel like you're shrinking your life. It should feel like you're expanding into a better one. You're not losing, you're refining. You're trading clutter for clarity, weight for freedom, and noise for peace. Over the years, I've noticed something about the people who are happiest in retirement. They're not the ones who have the most stuff. They're the ones who've learned the difference between what they own and what owns them. Because everything you keep, the house, the cars, the hobbies, even the responsibilities, takes something from you. It takes a piece of your time, a bit of your attention, a slice of your energy, and those are your most precious resources now. You spent decades working, saving, and planning for this stage of your life. You deserve to enjoy it without being weighed down by the things that no longer fit who you are. So as you move forward, think carefully about what truly adds value and what's just taking up space. Whether it's a house that's too big, a car that's barely used, or an identity that no longer serves you, remember that letting go isn't a step backward. It's a step towards something new, something lighter, something more aligned with the life you actually want to live. And maybe that's the real secret to a fulfilling retirement. Not holding on to everything that once mattered, but curating what matters now. Because once you clear out what doesn't serve you, what's left will mean so much more. If you're still holding on to any of these 5 things, you're not retired. You're just unemployed in broken slow motion. Let them go today and step into the retirement you actually deserve. Drop a "I'm letting go" in the comments right now if you're ready to reclaim your freedom. Hit that subscribe button and bell so you never miss the next life-changing truth. Share this video with one person who's stuck. You might just save their retirement. This is your sign. Let go and finally live. I'll see you in the next one.